Chapter 491. The construction of the floating city could not be done by Hathaway alone. A floating city like the floating city, which was the ultimate magic creation of the arcane empire, required a lot of people to work together to build. Among other things, it was a big project just to enchant the floating city with hardening spells. If only Sulen and Hathaway were relied on, they would be busy for a long time. It required a lot of wizards to work, which was one of the purposes of Sulen and Hathaway establishing the Wizard Academy. The Wizard Academy was to continuously provide a large number of wizard talents for Sulen. Sulen did not expect the wizards to become legends, which was unrealistic. He only wanted them to be promoted to official wizards. And even if they were wizard apprentices, there were a lot of jobs that they could do. For Sulen, wizards were high-level talents. He had too many jobs that needed wizards, such as planting magic herbs, refining potions, enchantment equipment, building wizard towers, and daily maintenance. If it were not for the lack of manpower, Sulen would not have made the golem factory automatic. As for the way the black wizards cultivated their apprentices, in Sulen's opinion, it was a complete waste. Those who were strong and talented would learn. Those who were good at fighting would be arranged to become combat wizards. Those who were not good at fighting would be responsible for various logistics work. Those who were not talented could be planted with magic plants. In short, in Sulen's opinion, these wizards were all labor. The way the black wizards cultivated their apprentices was only brave and fierce. They might be strong for a while, but in the long run, they were far less developed than Sulen's way. Sulen's way would snowball and become stronger in the future. Moreover, the black wizards' way of cultivating their apprentices had a high chance of backfiring. That was why he used the black wizards' way of cultivating their apprentices. Sulen put away the principle and making of the floating ring, and took out the 9 transformation golden pill. His only attribute value was charm, which had not reached 50. The 2 free attribute points that he got from the upgrade were directly added to charm. Sulen's charm value increased to 35 points. Then he took 3 more 9 transformation golden pills and got 15 free attribute points. After adding all these points to charm, Sulen's charm value also reached 50 points. The increase in charm was a little different from other attributes. There seemed to be no change after moving his body, but Sulen felt that the elemental energy around him seemed to have become closer to him. With a snap of his fingers, a water ball appeared in front of him. Then the water ball turned into a mirror, and Sulen's appearance was reflected. The facial features of the figure in the mirror did not change much from before, but there were slight adjustments and refinements. His face was bright and clean, and his facial features were handsome and angular. His eyes were dark and deep, like a pair of black gemstones with a charming luster. His eyebrows were straight, his lips were red, and his teeth were white. His eyes were bright and clear, and his figure was elegant and graceful. His neck was long and slender, and his skin was white. This was not a human. Even if a god descended, it would not be better than this. Sure enough, I've become more handsome. Looking at himself in the mirror, Sulen was not surprised. This was his true appearance. Charm was not only about appearance, but also about elemental energy. Sure enough, even elemental energy was close to those who were good-looking. Sulen left the seclusion room and went to the astrology platform. He gave the book he got this time to her to study, then took Chris and Alex to the secret plane. He had gained a lot of good things this time, and he had already made a decision. He now had 3 divinity crystals in his hands. One of them was from the Brain Hunter, which only had 1 divinity left. The divinity crystal he got from killing the Heartless Incarnation had 6 divinity points, and the nature crystal he got from opening the treasure chest contained 2 divinity points. In total, he had 9 divinity points. The nature crystal had other uses, and Sulen could not absorb the remaining divinity for the time being, so he planned to let his maids use it. Sulen now had 9 divinity points, and he would reach the first critical point after absorbing 1 more divinity. He planned to distribute the remaining 6 divinity points to each of them first. "Chris, Alex, this is for you." Su Len handed them 2 magic gems that emitted evil energy fluctuations. These 2 magic gems were sealed by the divinity that Su Len had extracted from the divinity crystal left behind by the evil god. Divinity crystal? Chris and Alex exclaimed in surprise when they saw the faint golden gems in Sullen's hands. "Yes, divinity crystal." Su Len nodded. "Although these are divinity crystals, the remnant consciousness in the divinity has not been cleaned up. When you absorb the divinity, you must remove the remnant consciousness, energy, and so on. If you don't want to be affected by the remnant consciousness in the divinity, it's best to clean it up before absorbing it." As soon as Su Len finished speaking, Chris and Alex grabbed the divinity crystals in his hands. In fact, both of them were divine creatures, and it was much more convenient for them to absorb divinity than for Su Len. Abyssal demons were actually creatures of the same level as angels. The strength of those demon lords in the abyss was comparable to that of the gods. Otherwise, abyssal demons would have courted death everywhere and caused trouble until now. Basically, as long as it was a secondary demon lord, there would more or less be some divinity on them. It was just that the divinity on a demon's body contained a lot of negative energy and all kinds of chaotic consciousness. If Chris wanted to advance, she would need to obtain the succubus queen's blessing and obtain the qualifications of an honorary nun. Of course, Chris would have to return to the abyss. Of course, Su Luen would not let Chris return to the abyss, let alone let her accept the succubus queen's blessing. The succubus queen's blessing was not easy to obtain. The succubus queen, who was as beautiful as a delicate datura flower, was one of the most dangerous demons in the abyss. This bitch was known as the most dangerous woman in the abyss along with the spider queen Lolth of the infernal realm. Without the succubus queen's blessing, it was not impossible for a succubus to advance her bloodline. This required the power of divinity. As the most powerful force in the multiverse, divinity had many miraculous powers. It was not difficult for the little succubus Chris to advance to legend. Compared to Chrissy, Alex's bloodline source wasn't weak either. It was just that her bloodline was too ancient. Back then, the ancient gods had either fallen, gone missing, or gone into seclusion. Alex's bloodline was already very thin. If it weren't for the reversion of her bloodline, she would still be a harpy and not a winged person. Bloodline was Alex's advantage, but also her limitation. Fortunately, Alex was a wizard. Otherwise, if she wanted to advance, she would have to rely on her bloodline. It was just that her bloodline potential was almost exhausted. If she wanted to advance her bloodline again, she would have to rely on divinity. After Su Luen gave the 2 of them the divinity crystal stones, Chris and Alex each found a place to go into seclusion. A little divinity crystal stone was not enough for them to directly advance, but it could make it easier for them to advance. Hidden Realm, Nature Oak. After a period of growth, the oak had grown to a height of more than 20 meters. As soon as Su Len arrived, he could feel a strong natural aura. The tall oak swayed gently when the wind blew. Su Luen took out a nature divine crystal. He intended to use this nature divine crystal on this nature oak tree. Even if a mortal absorbed the power of divinity, they would be able to transcend mortality and obtain great power. If the nature oak absorbed the divinity, it would also be reborn. Of course, some preparations would be needed before this could happen. The nature oak was located in the hidden realm. Su Len had divided it into a special sealed space. Su Len took out his tools and began to build a magic circle on the ground. The level of the spell he planned to cast was a bit high, so it could not be cast without a magic circle. After learning from Hathaway for a while, Su Len had fixed his own shortcomings. Building a magic circle was not too difficult for him. As time went by, a complex magic circle began to appear little by little. Phew! Su Len stood up and let out a long breath. He looked at his masterpiece with excitement. It was his first time making a complicated rune circle like this. Looks like I'm quite talented. Normal wizards can't do this. Su Lin stretched his wrist and put away his tools proudly. After finishing, Su Lin took out a magic staff and stood in the center of the circle. Tower Spirit 1. Connect to the energy channel. Open the elemental pool. Powerful elemental energy gushed out from the elemental pool. The energy channel glowed faintly. Su Lin gently inserted the magic staff into the center of the circle. A powerful energy suddenly appeared around Su Lin. Wish! Bright light burst out from the circle. A powerful energy rushed into Su Lin's body, and a melodious ancient chant sounded. As the spell ended, a terrible pressure shrouded the place. This kind of coercion made Su Lin feel a strong pressure. With the appearance of a magic aura, a high-space portal opened in mid-air. The next second, the portal reflected the light of divinity. A creature full of power and divinity appeared in front of him. Su Lin narrowed his eyes. The figure in front of him was a tall wind elemental. She looked like a woman. She looked like a genie in a magic lamp. She held a quill pen and a contract in her hand. After seeing Su Lin, she asked calmly, "Did you summon me?" "A demigod who is about to advance." "What wish do you have? Or what wish do you want to fulfill?" "As long as it's reasonable, it can be fulfilled." "A jinn, at least a jinn at the level of a god." Su Lin was stunned for a moment. Then he reacted. He was a high-grade legend. At the same time, he also had divinity. Ordinary jinn at the level of a demigod were not qualified to respond to his summons. Only a jinn at the level of a god could respond to him. Chapter 492. This was an angel of an elemental god. The effect of the prayer spell was actually to make a deal with an elemental spirit. Normally, wizards would only summon a demigod elemental spirit. Only the more powerful ones could summon an angel of an elemental god. If you were powerful enough, you could directly invite an elemental god. "Tell me your wish." The angel of an elemental god urged impatiently while Su Lin was still in a daze. The wishing spell also had a time limit. If the transaction was not completed within the specified time, it would be regarded as a failure and the elemental oracle would leave directly. Su Lin could only use the wishing spell again to summon a new elemental jinn. "I hope you can give this oak tree wisdom." Su Lin pointed at the nature oak tree next to him. The angel of an elemental god looked at Su Lin strangely and said slowly, "Give this oak tree wisdom? This is not an easy task. Do you need me to give it that level of wisdom? If it's too high, you'll need to summon other elemental spirits. The level of a newborn baby, but also the ability to grow." Su Lin said directly. "Okay, this is a contract. Write your request on it. I'll give you a hint. Don't make a mistake." The angel of an elemental god said slowly. Su Lin carefully took the contract. The material used to make the contract looked like sheepskin, but it wasn't sheepskin. Su Lin couldn't tell the specifics, but the contract had a strange power. Su Lin was very cautious about this kind of contract. Once a contract of this level was signed, the consequences would be very serious. Su Lin carefully began to check the contract again and again. These patterns on the contract need to be removed. Su Lin pointed at the circle of decorative patterns on the edge of the contract. The angel of an elemental god looked at it and slowly said, "Okay, you're very cautious. I have to be cautious. I don't want to pay a heavy price because I didn't read the contract clearly." Su Lin said calmly. "I'm not a devil. I won't use such despicable means to deceive you." The angel of an elemental god looked at Su Lin unhappily. At the same time, he reached out and used his divine power to remove the patterns on the contract. "You are indeed different, but I have to be careful when signing such a contract." Su Lin shook his head. "Alright, let's sign this contract according to the current standard. After saying that, Sulen picked up the quill pen and signed his name on the contract. Alright, the elemental envoy said as she looked at the contract. Then, she picked up the quill beside her and quickly wrote down the contents of the deal. With a flash of golden light, the written contract appeared in front of Sulen. Let's take a look. To fulfill this wish, you need to pay 2 points of divinity, or the corresponding soul power. If you agree, then leave your soul brand on the contract. Sulen took the contract and read it carefully. He read the 3 lines 4 or 5 times until he was sure that there were no problems. Then, he left his soul imprint on it. Very good. Feng Juling gently waved his hand, and the signed contract dissipated with the wind. Then, a divine power enveloped Ling Run and Ling Run. Sulen took out the wishing crystal that he had already prepared from the storage space and said, "This crystal is your reward." Feng Juling's eyes lit up. His fingers moved slightly, and a gust of wind blew. The wishing crystal in Sulen's hand flew up and fell into his hand. After casually sizing it up, Feng Juling's palm turned over and directly put away the wishing crystal. All right. According to the contents of the contract, if you pay the reward, I will give wisdom to the oak tree. Soul awakening technique. Divine power plus change reality. A beam of spiritual light descended from the sky and landed directly on the nature oak tree. The originally ordinary oak tree suddenly seemed to have something extra. Soon, a weak soul fluctuation was born from the oak tree. The soul light was extremely weak, just like a firefly. It seemed that it would be blown away by the wind. However, although this spark was weak, it was full of vitality. Instead of being extinguished, it began to grow. Seeing that the soul fire had slowly grown to a certain extent, the wind spirit god envoy withdrew his hand. All right. The contract is complete. Goodbye. After that, Feng Juling said to Sulen, "Next time you have this kind of crystal and need to make a wish, feel free to summon me. My name is Alonas. Goodbye, little guy." Before his voice fell, the Feng Juling turned into a whirlwind and disappeared in front of him. The powerful pressure that shrouded the surroundings also dissipated. Most of the elemental gods were neutral. They rarely paid attention to other planes. In the records of the multiverse, the only large-scale war between the elemental gods was because the demons of the abyss wanted to expand and occupy the multiverse. As a result, as soon as they came out of the abyss, the elemental gods led the 4 elements to beat them up and swept the abyss. After obtaining the soul awakening technique, this natural oak tree had awakened its spiritual wisdom. However, its spiritual wisdom was very low and needed to grow slowly. After awakening its spiritual wisdom, this natural oak tree was no longer an ordinary tree, but had a trace of possibility. Although it had now awakened its spiritual wisdom, the hope of growing into a tree of life or even a world tree was very slim. However, it was still possible to make it stronger. Sulen took out the nature crystal from the storage space and modified the array of the soul awakening technique. Soon, a new array appeared in front of him. Sulen stood in the middle of the new array and took out a staff. Tower Spirit 1. Connect to the energy channel. Open the elemental pool. Powerful elemental energy quickly poured in and the whole array lit up again. Sulen took a deep breath and then began to chant an incantation. Soul awakening technique. Elemental energy rose from Sulen's body, and then the nature crystal in Sulen's hand flew up. Powerful elemental energy gushed out from Sulen's hand and a dazzling brilliance appeared. The nature crystal then turned into a golden light and instantly integrated into the nature oak next to it. As soon as the golden light integrated into the nature oak, the 20-meter-tall nature oak seemed to be inflated and began to grow rapidly. The surrounding elemental energy was instantly sucked away. Seeing this, Sulen immediately ordered Tower Spirit 1 to open the energy channel. Azure elemental water gushed out. With enough energy, the oak tree grew rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the oak tree had grown to 25 meters tall. With the addition of a large amount of elemental water, the oak tree continued to grow rapidly, but it had slowed down. As time passed, the oak tree finally stopped growing after reaching a height of 30 meters. A breeze blew, and the entire nature oak shook slightly. The nature oak faintly expressed a hint of joy. Its lush branches swayed slightly as if it was greeting him. The nature oak in front of him had fused with the nature divinity and was already a divine creature. The surrounding natural energy became more and more abundant, and the environment was constantly changing. He felt an aura of growth. Even the surrounding space was beginning to be affected. A surge of energy was transmitted from the nature oak into Sullen's body. This energy was very gentle. As soon as it entered his body, it integrated with Sullen's body. This energy dissipated in his body and began to quickly repair the hidden injuries Sulan had suffered in the past. At the same time, the violent power of thunder and lightning in Su Luan's body began to become gentle. Although the power of thunder and lightning was powerful, it was very violent. When Su Luan used it, he would hurt himself. In the past, when Su Kun used the power of thunder and lightning, his body would also be injured. Fortunately, his regeneration ability was strong. After the energy fusion just now, the originally wild and untamed power of lightning suddenly became docile. After circulating in his body, it no longer harmed his body. Even the remnant evil consciousness he had when he absorbed the divinity was dispelled by this energy. The divinity had completely integrated into his body. Feeling the changes in his lightning energy, Sulan was overjoyed. He patted the nature oak's trunk. "Grow well here. No one will disturb you." The nature oak waved its trunk, and the rustling of leaves could be heard. Sulan stayed here for a while before sealing off the area again. This nature oak was still very young and weak. Its current abilities were more supportive, such as healing, purification, and accelerating the growth of plants. It would only become more powerful after it continued to grow. After sealing off the area around the nature oak, Sulan stretched his body and returned to his room in the mystery realm. At this time, Alex and Chris were already in seclusion. Sulan did not disturb them. After the two obtained the divinity, they began to remove the original consciousness of the divinity. Once the consciousness was removed, they would integrate the divinity into their bodies. The houses in the mystery realm were built with druid spells. Sullen's room was a big tree. Some people used mushrooms, some used pumpkins, and some used tree houses. All in all, the rooms were very varied. It looked like a fairy tale. After Sulan returned to his room, he also prepared to go into seclusion. With the nature oak's help, he had already absorbed the divinity. Sulan had a lot of divinity in his hands. He naturally wanted to absorb all of it as soon as possible. He was only one step away from becoming a demigod. After returning to his room, Sulan went to the training room and had Tower Spirit 1 open the energy channel. Rich elemental energy gushed out. Sulan sat on the rune circle of the training room and took out the divinity crystal. Soul extraction. A powerful energy appeared. Lightning turned into chains and shot into the divinity crystal. Lightning flashed, and the evil god's soul was slowly pulled out. P.S. Pulling out teeth is too painful. Floating Dream is going to pull out 3 wisdom teeth this time. Sob sob sob. It's so painful that I can't even write. I'll try to update every day. Chapter 493. Although it was only a part of the evil god's soul, it was still very powerful. It was just that it wasn't Sullen's match when it was alive, let alone after it died. Thunder sealing magic. Endless thunder and lightning wrapped around the evil god's soul. The phantom of the evil god's soul howled in pain as it floated above the gem. As energy crazily surged, Su Luan took a deep breath and a beam of light rose up. Divinity extraction. Streaks of dark purple soul energy slowly entered Sullen's body. This energy was full of evil, madness, and destruction. Sulen needed to extract the divinity from this chaotic soul energy. Sulen already had experience, and extracting divinity was a walk in the park for him. He sealed the chaotic, evil, and crazy soul energy into another magic gemstone. Soon, the gemstone used to seal the soul energy turned dark purple. This soul energy was full of all kinds of negative emotions. Although absorbing it could improve the soul energy and strengthen the soul origin, it would also corrode the soul. If one was not careful, they would become a fallen one, and their entire being would become crazy, bloodthirsty, and destructive. Sulen didn't want to become such a lunatic, so the best way was to use it to make a legendary rune. High-quality soul crystals were rare and very precious. Sulen only had one, which he obtained after killing the brain hunter and extracting all the divinity in its soul. Sulen gave the divinity crystal to Chris to absorb, and the rest of the soul crystals were not used yet. High-quality legendary soul crystals could be used to make legendary runes such as the Magic Breaker and Arcane Guard. Northfield City didn't even have a diamond golem, let alone a high-quality legendary golem like the Magic Breaker. Sulen slowly injected the divinity into his body. Soon, his body felt full and satisfied. Sulen immediately stopped absorbing the divinity, and then quickly used the Thunder Chain to reseal the rest of the evil god's soul. After extracting the divinity, Sulen still needed to absorb some of the divinity. At the same time, he needed to erase the remnant consciousness of the divinity. This step would take a lot of time, and this kind of thing could not be rushed. After absorbing the divinity, Sullen's negative energy aura also increased a lot. There were still 4 points of divinity left in the divinity crystal in his hand, and he could only slowly absorb them later. Ding! Congratulations host, you have successfully absorbed 1 divinity. Ding! Congratulations host, your divinity has reached 10 points. The power of divinity has begun to transform your body. You have successfully become a demigod. Divine power is changing your body. Faint golden energy emerged from Sullen's blood and began to wander around his body. Traces of golden energy penetrated deep into his bones, muscles, and organs. His body, which was already very strong, became even stronger. Dong dong dong. His heartbeat became more and more dull, like the sound of a war drum ringing in his ears. His blood was like mercury, rapidly flushing out the impurities in his flesh and bones bit by bit. As time passed, his bones also became harder and harder. The elemental energy in the isolation room surged, and a large amount of elemental energy quickly rushed into Sullen's body. The speed was getting faster and faster. After noticing that the energy in the isolation room was being consumed quickly, Tower Spirit Number 1 immediately increased the energy supply to the elemental pool. The surging elemental water rushed in quickly, and the originally low concentration of elemental energy was quickly replenished. Sulen absorbed the elemental energy faster and faster. The highly concentrated elemental energy washed through his body, and then merged into every part of his body. A vortex appeared around him, and as soon as the vortex appeared, it quickly grew bigger. In the blink of an eye, it covered the entire room. The vortex grew bigger and bigger, and soon formed a scene like a tornado. If a high-ranking wizard saw this, he would definitely recognize it. This was the extremely rare elemental siphon. Su Luan quickly absorbed the elemental energy, and his body also underwent earth-shaking changes under the influence of the divine power. From his bones to his flesh and blood, the golden light was thoroughly integrated into his flesh and blood. Even his soul began to transform under the influence of the divine power. At this time, if Sullen's soul was out of his body, he would find that his original soul had become extremely solid, and his soul was also tinged with a faint golden color. A large amount of energy flowed back and forth in Sullen's body. After his soul was reconstructed, the energy rushed to his body again. The divine power not only changed his soul, but also his body. Ding! Transformation complete. Congratulations, you have successfully become a demigod. Host has successfully become a demigod. You have received the demigod talent, demigod body. Host has successfully become a demigod. You have received the demigod talent, language proficiency. Host has successfully become a demigod. You have received the demigod talent, divine transcendence. Host has successfully become a demigod. You have received the demigod talent, immortality. Congratulations, host has become a demigod. Your understanding of the thunder territory has deepened. You have mastered more of the rule power, and your ability has been greatly improved. You have received the skill, Thunder's Fury. Host's divinity has reached 10 points. All attributes +2. The system's notifications kept ringing in his ears. Sulen slowly opened his eyes. A golden light flashed through his eyes, and the entire isolation room seemed to be lit up at that moment. As he woke up, the elemental energy gradually calmed down, and the elemental siphon disappeared. Sulen opened the system interface and began to look at the changes after becoming a demigod. At the top was the demigod body. Demigod body, this is the primary form of a god's incarnation. You, who have divine power, have surpassed the realm of mortals. Your body will not be hurt by ordinary weapons, and any weapons below the extraordinary level will not hurt you. At the same time, you will not fall sick. Your resistance to poison, curses, and other negative effects will be increased by 30 points. Your resistance to spells will be increased by 30 points. Language proficiency, divine ability. After becoming a demigod, you have automatically gained the ability to read all night. You can write most languages. Your literacy +15. Language proficiency and language proficiency work together. Sulen learned most languages in an instant. All living beings had this ability. Divine transcendence, demigods have integrated themselves with the power of the law. Their bodies have transcended the racial boundary and become a new race. Your own magic ability and resistance to spells have been greatly enhanced. You are immune to spells of the third circle or below. Whether it is the effect of spells or the damage caused by spells, they will not have any effect on your body. This ability made Sulen immune to spells of the third circle and below. With Sulen's high resistance to spells and magic defense, even a fourth circle spell would cause very little damage to Sulen. This ability was the ability of divinity. Legend had it that the gods with great divine power were immune to spells of the seventh circle and below. Immortality, after obtaining enough divinity, the mortal body will be transformed. Your lifespan will be greatly enhanced. Your life will be greatly strengthened. You will not age, and your physical fitness will always be in a state of abundance. The state of immortality did not mean immortality. Immortality only meant that one's face and strength would not age. One's physical fitness would also be at its peak. As for aging, it would only appear when one reached the end of one's life. Immortality was the literal meaning. Those who obtained immortality would have a near-eternal lifespan. As long as they were not killed by others or died by accident, they would be able to live forever. Of course, this talent also had its drawbacks. The person who obtained this talent would age. Although this aging would be very slow, it would also affect one's combat effectiveness. Only with the two talents of immortality and immortality could one be considered truly immortal. Of course, one could still be killed. After becoming a demigod, Sulen's strength had improved again. However, if he wanted to improve further, he would need to reach 30 points of divinity. In addition to these, Sulen also received a reward of +2 to all attributes. After his attribute points reached 50, he would need to spend 3 free attribute points to increase it by 1 point. This time, the +2 to all attributes was equivalent to an increase of 10 points, which was equivalent to 30 free attribute points. If Sulen's attributes had not reached 50 before, he would have received +5 to all attributes. Of course, the upper limit was 50. Just after Sulen received +2 to all attributes, he heard the system prompt again. Congratulations, host, your strength attribute has broken through 50 points. You have received the legendary talent, Epic Strength. Congratulations, host, your physique attribute has broken through 50 points. You have received the legendary talent, Epic Physique. Congratulations, host, your agility attribute has broken through 50 points. You have received the legendary talent, Epic Agility. Congratulations, host, your spirit attribute has broken through 50 points. You have received the legendary talent, Epic Spirit. Congratulations, host, your charm attribute has broken through 50 points. You have received the legendary talent, Epic Charm. Hearing the system prompt, Sulen only felt a surge of power in his body again, and then slowly merged into his body. Epic Strength, legendary ability, your strength has exceeded the scope of human beings. When attacking, your strength will cause an additional 3 points of damage. You will permanently gain an additional 3 points when making a strength test. At the same time, when attacking, there is a chance to cause crushing damage to those whose strength is lower than your own by 5 points. In any strength test, you will gain an additional 1 epic point. After all of Sulen's attributes had broken through 50 points, he had directly gained 5 legendary talents. It could be said that his accumulated talents and toughness had now surpassed that of a dragon in its prime, except for the legendary dragon species. According to his current physical fitness, it would be polite to say that he was a humanoid dragon. Chapter 494. Epic Physique, legendary ability, your physique is far beyond the range of humans. When you receive any damage, you will gain an additional 3 points of damage reduction. Your test of fortitude will gain a permanent 3 points bonus, and you will gain an additional 30 points of HP. When you receive any test of physique, you will gain an additional 1 point of epic value. With the Epic Physique talent, Sulen's already thick defense was increased again. With his current level of tankiness, ordinary attacks could not hurt him at all. Even many warriors who specialized in defense would find it difficult to reach this level of epic physique. With Sulen's original legendary strength, legendary regeneration, and legendary tenacity, his vitality was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. Sulen felt that even if he did not add any defense, he would not be hurt at all if he jumped into the magma now. The magma was like a hot spring to him. Epic Spirit, legendary ability, you have a comprehension ability that is far beyond ordinary people. No spell model can be difficult for you. Your memory ability and analysis ability have been further improved. When casting any spell, you can fully understand and analyze the structure of the spell. This allows you to perfect and modify certain spells. In any test of spell penetration, you will gain a permanent 1-point bonus. Sulen did not feel much change in Epic Spirit. He just felt that his mind was clearer and his thinking had become more agile. There were some other benefits that he needed to experience on his own. In addition to these, Epic Dexterity and Epic Charm were not weak either. Sulen's strength could now be said to have skyrocketed. Sulen moved his body and closed the energy channel. The elemental energy in the seclusion room returned to normal. Only then did he get up and leave. In fact, Sulen's divinity value was now. If he obtained a divine spark, he could almost try to become a god. Becoming a god was both difficult and simple. In addition to divinity, one also needed a divine spark and a divine spark. To put it bluntly, the clergy was the scope and responsibility of the gods. If Sulen wanted to become a god, the clergy would be ready-made. It would be the God of Thunder, or Thunder, clergy. In addition to the clergy, there was also the divinity. It was not easy to obtain a quintessence. A quintessence was a materialized substance formed by the laws of the multiverse. If one had a thorough understanding of one of the laws, one could attempt to condense a quintessence. Of course, there was another way, and that was to kill other creatures with a quintessence. There were many creatures with divinity. For example, the demons of the bottomless abyss would drop divinity fragments from the lesser demon lords. As long as one killed a few lesser demon lords, they would be able to synthesize a complete divinity fragment. Of course, archangels, divine envoys, and elemental spirits could also drop divinity fragments. Of course, if one felt that they were strong enough, they could also directly kill gods. If the weakest weak divine power god left the divine kingdom, the challenge rating would be around level 35. If the god was in the divine kingdom, then the challenge rating would be increased by 5 to 10 levels. Fighting in the divine kingdom was completely at the god's home ground, and the strength of others would be suppressed there. The best time to kill a god was when the god's body came to the material plane in the form of a saint. The limited number of deicides in history were basically completed under such circumstances. The opportunity to become a god could only be encountered by chance. Although the gods had destroyed the arcane kingdom, Sulan did not have any prejudice against these special and powerful beings. Many arcanists in the arcane kingdom had also sought the opportunity to become a god, but in the end, there were still very few who succeeded. The study of the gods had always been in the hands of the top wizards. Otherwise, there would not be such a forbidden spell as divine ascension, and there would not be creatures like the demigod Lich. There were many wizards who wanted to become a god. After having the above three things, the next step was to have believers. Every righteous god would have its own church. These churches were responsible for preaching, cultivating believers, and providing the gods with the power of faith. The power of faith would be transformed into the divine power used by the gods. The road to becoming a god was a sea of corpses and blood. In history, except for the lucky one, the other strong mortals who had succeeded in becoming a god had killed their way from the material plane to the abyss of hell, and then killed their way back and forth in the abyss of hell. There were even some ruthless characters who had killed their way through the lower planes on the road to becoming a god. Their names were taboo in many worlds, they were the kind of existence that could not be mentioned at all. Others might want to become a god, but Sulan did not have such an idea. The gods were subject to too many restrictions. In the secret realm, Sulan had successfully advanced into a demigod and came out of seclusion. As soon as he opened the door of the seclusion room, Sulan saw Chris and Alex sitting outside in a daze. Their white jade-like fingers were tapping on the table irregularly, and their expressions were absent-minded. Sulan closed the door of the seclusion room and asked, "What's wrong with you two?" "Ah, Sulan, you've come out of seclusion?" Chris heard Sulan's voice and immediately stood up. "Are you okay? There was such a big commotion just now." "I was worried about you," Alex asked. Sulan moved his body and said proudly, "Of course I'm fine. Just now, I've successfully advanced into a demigod." "Demigod?" Alex and Chris looked at Sulan in disbelief. "You've advanced into a demigod?" Sulan did not say anything. Instead, he released his territory directly. Alex and Chris instantly felt an invisible pressure enveloping them. It was very difficult for them to move their bodies, and a sense of alarm rose in their hearts. Seeing that the two were having difficulty breathing and their bodies were shaking, Sulan withdrew his territory pressure. For them who had not yet reached the legendary level, his current pressure was too strong. Whoosh! As soon as Sulan withdrew his territory pressure, the two's bodies went limp and were about to fall. Sulan hurriedly supported them. "How are you? You almost scared me to death." Chris patted her towering chest and complained. Sulan chuckled. "By the way, how's your divinity absorption going?" Chris and Alex looked at each other, then stood up. With a slight tremble, a pair of wings stretched out from behind them. Chrissy's wings were devil's wings, which were very similar to the fleshy wings of bats. However, devil's wings were dark red and looked more ferocious. Su Luan had seen Chrissy's devil's wings before. Now, devil's wings were obviously stronger and larger. In addition to these, some small scales had also grown on her wings, and her defense had also increased by quite a bit. Alex's wings were feathered, and her wings were even bigger than Chris's. Right now, Alex's wings looked like they had a layer of metallic luster, looking very hard. On the feathers of her wings, there was also a layer of faint golden light, making her wings look very beautiful. In addition to these, Sulan also discovered that Alex's ears had become a little sharper, her skin had become as white as milk, and her body seemed to have the smell of the wind. Her long hair was also covered in a strange luster, and there was a faint golden color at the ends of her hair. The most obvious change was her pupils. Even Alex didn't realize that her pupils had become like emeralds, faintly emitting a faint golden light. These changes showed that Alex's bloodline had become denser. Beside him, Chris also underwent a similar transformation. Her skin became even whiter, smoother, and more supple. A golden radiance flashed in the depths of her eyes, and the charm she exuded became even stronger. Every move she made was astonishingly charming. She looked like a beautiful black rose. The shackles that had originally prevented them from becoming legends had also loosened. On Sullen's attribute panel, there was an additional, divine creature, awakening, label in their attribute panels. Their experience slots had also been filled by more than half, and they were very close to leveling up. Of course, although they had become divine creatures with divinity, they were still the lowest level of divine creatures. Above divine creatures were demigods, and above them were weak gods, followed by weak divine power, intermediate divine power, great divine power, and great divine power. Demigods were generally descendants of gods. Most of the weak gods were gods born from some small races, and were usually subordinate to the mainstream gods. Orthodox gods were generally intermediate divine powers, and the main god of a divine system was basically a great divine power. As for the great divine power gods, so far, there were very few of them. Gods such as Gaia Mother, Nero the god of death, and the god of justice, like Alex and Chris, were completely unorthodox. It seems that you've absorbed it well. Sulen nodded with satisfaction. This divine power is really powerful. I feel like I've been reborn. Alex said as he folded his wings. Chris nodded repeatedly like a chick pecking at rice. She went around to Sullen's side and hugged Sulen with her jade-like arms. The amazing elasticity of her chest pressed against Sullen's back. Feeling that Sullen's breathing had suddenly become a little faster, Chris smiled slightly and said, "Master, can you give us a little more divine power?" "Yes, I can. Divine power has the ability to turn something rotten into something magical, but it's not easy to get this kind of power." Sulen shook his head and said, "After you've completely digested the divine power, and the residual negative energy consciousness in your body has been completely removed, I'll give you more divine power. Don't think about it now." "Ah." Chris was disappointed, and she was a little dejected. Next to her, Alex also became a little disappointed. "Greedy." Sulen shook his head. "If you continue to absorb divinity, be careful that you'll eventually be affected by the residual consciousness in the divinity, and you won't even have a place to cry." Chapter 495. Night fell, and the silver moonlight shone on the ground. After a day of hustle and bustle, Northgard City gradually quieted down. Sulen lay on the soft sofa and tasted the green tea that the little succubus Chrissy had made. The nobles of this era liked to add fresh milk, sugar, and other spices to their tea. The taste was very strange, and Sulen had never gotten used to drinking this kind of tea. He liked green tea and black tea, and the little succubus Chrissy had added some magical plants and flowers to this tea. It tasted pretty good. Alex frowned and took a sip before putting down the cup. He then said to Chrissy with a fawning expression, "Big sister Chrissy, I want to drink more's coffee. Can you make me a cup?" I really don't know what to do with you. There's not much more's coffee left. If you finish this, you'll have to wait until next year. Chrissy patted Alex's head dotingly. But this is the last of this month's supply. If you finish it, you'll have to wait until next month. Okay, hurry up and make me a cup. Alex nodded his little head like a chick pecking at rice. Chrissy shook her head. She then took out an exquisite clay pot and poured out some brown powder. She then picked up a glass bottle and poured out some elemental water. There was a flash of light and a flash of fire elemental energy. In the next second, the elemental water in the cup began to boil. Chrissy picked up the cup and poured the boiling elemental water into the Moore's coffee powder while stirring it with a glass rod. Soon, an alluring aroma wafted out of the cup. At the same time, there was a powerful energy fluctuation from the cup. Alex's eyes lit up, and he couldn't wait to bring the brewed Moorish coffee over. He didn't mind that it was hot, and directly took a sip. After that, he closed his eyes to savor the aftertaste, and his eyes narrowed like a pair of crescent moons. Moore's coffee was a magical plant unique to the Hidden Realm. It wasn't produced in large quantities. At the same time, a dozen other magical plants had to be added to make it. It tasted fragrant and silky. Alex, Hathaway, Phyllis, and Chrissy all liked this drink. Apart from the fact that it tasted good, this Moore coffee could increase one's magic power and mental strength. Most importantly, it could purify one's physical body. This was very useful to Alex. Although the purification effect was very small, if he used it for a long time, these effects could not be underestimated. La la la, la la la, I'm happy little red, a cheerful humming sound was heard, and then a figure came bouncing over. When she saw Su Len, a trace of panic flashed in her eyes, and her body stiffened. Then, she tiptoed around and wanted to leave, but before she could take a step, Sullen's figure had already appeared. Onyxvia. Where are you going to hide? Su Len asked, lying on the sofa. Who dodged? The red dragon Onyxvia pretended to be calm and said, I just forgot to close the door when I went out. Oh right, I still have something to do, so I'll go back first. After saying that, he turned around and slipped away. I've already asked someone to close the door, so you don't have to worry about it. Now, let's talk about other things. Sullen's figure flashed, and he appeared beside the red dragon Onyxvia. He reached out and picked up the little red dragon, and then returned to the room. Su Len threw the little red dragon on the carpet and glared at her fiercely. Tell me, who told you to sneak into the secret realm's obsidian factory to eat fire copper and magic iron? This. That. The little red dragon Onyxvia's eyes darted around. Have you thought about how to lie? Su Len stared at the little red dragon with a half-smile. Previously, he had noticed that some of the metal ingots produced in the obsidian factory were missing. Tower Spirit No. 1 had reported that Onyxvia had secretly swallowed them. Ah. It hurts. Stop hitting me. Stop hitting me, I'll get angry if you hit me again. Roar. Ouch. Wah wah wah. The little red dragon Onyxvia rubbed her buttocks. The dragon's recovery ability was very fast, and Su Luen did not cause her any harm. At most, he just made her feel unbearable pain. She sneakily reached for the milk tea Chris had made and poured herself a cup. Then, when Su Luen was not paying attention, she picked up a bare biscuit and stuffed it directly into her mouth without chewing. Then, she picked up the milk tea and drank it happily. Delicious. The little red dragon said with satisfaction. Su Len looked at her expressionlessly, and then said, Why did you steal those metal ingots? To eat. The little red dragon said casually, and then immediately reacted. What steal? I didn't steal, I just borrowed. Okay, borrowed. Sullen's mouth twitched. Tell me, why did you borrow those metal ingots? I'm growing right now, and I need to eat metal to grow. Onyxvia said as she stuffed the bear biscuit into her mouth. After listening to Onyxvia's explanation, Sulen finally understood that dragons needed to eat all kinds of minerals and metals as they grew. It was not that they were so hungry that they could only eat dirt, but after eating these minerals, their claws and scales would be strengthened. The scales, claws, and teeth of dragons were not very hard when they were born, but as time passed, they would become hard little by little as they grew up. When they became young dragons, they would consciously swallow minerals to increase the strength of their scales. This was an innate ability of the dragons. They were able to obtain some substances from minerals, making their scales and claws extremely hard. Okay, I'll prepare metal ingots for you to grow, but you're not allowed to steal from the golem factory. And you're not allowed to bathe in the lava pool. If I find out, I'll beat you every time I catch you, do you hear me? Sulen reached out and knocked Onyxvia on the head. After training the little red dragon, Sulen leisurely left the secret realm and came to Northtown City. The Qilin Pavilion in Northtown City was still under construction. When Sulen came to the construction site, the Qilin Pavilion was already more than half completed. The entire Qilin Pavilion was magnificent, about 10 meters tall, and occupied a vast area. In this building, there were statues of all kinds of animals, such as horses, camels, and so on. They were all carved to perfection and looked very lifelike. In the center of the Qilin Pavilion, there was a huge statue that was 8 meters tall. This statue was carved with a qilin. The main material of the Qilin Pavilion was redwood, a specialty of the wasteland. This tree's trunk was straight, and the wood was hard and resistant to corrosion. It was a very good building material, and the wood used to build the Qilin Pavilion was over 1 meter in diameter. Chapter 496. After the construction of the Qilin Pavilion was more or less done, Sulen still had to carve some runes here before placing the most important item of the Qilin Pavilion, the Qilin horn. The Qilin horn was something similar to a deer's antler, but the Qilin horn was much sturdier and harder than a deer's antler. It was completely dark gold in color and there was a peculiar energy revolving around it. With one look, one could tell that it wasn't an ordinary item. After Sulen patrolled around the Qilin Pavilion, he left. According to the current progress, the building would be completed in 2 days. At that time, he would still need to personally come over to activate it. After patrolling around the Qilin Pavilion, Sulen walked around the northern citadel. The northern citadel had become even more flourishing. All kinds of caravans came and went in an endless stream. The first batch of serfs that came to the northern citadel had obtained their freedom this year. While Sulen was strolling around, thousands of serfs were excitedly waiting in the plaza outside the city hall. These serfs had just passed the inspection and had gotten rid of their serf status and obtained their freedom. Right now, they were going through the household registration change. Other than the household registration change, they would also be allocated 5 to 20 mu of land according to their points. Outside the northern citadel, 500,000 mu of land had already been reclaimed. According to the plan, they would continue to reclaim this year. At the same time, Mirror Lake City had also reclaimed 200,000 mu of land. Right now, the northern citadel's efficiency of farming had increased by a lot. Because of the large amount of cattle and horses in Centaur City, the northern citadel had sufficient animal power. The land was now being plowed by cattle and horses. In the past, those gnomes, kobolds, and gnolls were either sent to mine or to build roads. After these people successfully got rid of their slave status and became free people, it made those serfs that hadn't obtained their freedom status extremely excited. The city hall held a grand celebration for these people. Of course, this grand celebration was relative, but to these people, it was already very good. At least they could eat a meal of meat and drink 2 cups of wine for free. The Northern Wind Principality's territory didn't continue to expand. After the ice and snow melted, Sulen sent people to build the new city once again. During this period of time, the nobles of San Felto City rebelled and a large number of nobles in the south rebelled. Other than the main culprit being killed, the other accomplices were all exiled to the northern citadel by Su Len. Ever since the snow melted last month, the exiled nobles had been escorted here. Most of these nobles were sent to work on construction sites, such as moving bricks, digging pits, and transporting sand and stones. However, some of them were knowledgeable and were sent to prison for political reform. Northern Battlefront City was developing very fast, but it was still lacking in all kinds of knowledge and talents. After these people were reformed in prison, they cried bitterly and deeply realized their mistakes. They turned over a new leaf and expressed their willingness to contribute their strength to the Duchy of Beifeng, showing their light and warmth. Su Luan was still very willing to give such lambs who knew how to mend their ways. Some of these people were trained to become basic officials of the Mirror Lake City, while others joined the students of the Northern Garrison City as teachers. Most of the nobles who were sent to the construction site were not used to this kind of life at all. It was only the goblin supervisors and gnoll supervisors who taught them what to do. Su Len discovered that these goblin supervisors and gnoll supervisors were very useful. The workers of the Northern Garrison City would not directly interact with the slaves. Usually, the supervisors would be the bad guys. These supervisors were very cruel to both their own race and the human slaves. The human supervisors would often punish the slaves with corporal punishment or deduct their food, while the goblins and gnolls preferred to use whips. If it wasn't for Sullen's request that they were not allowed to kill or cripple, the number of deaths and injuries of these slaves would be very high. One side played the good cop, the other side played the bad cop. The slaves of the Beifeng Duchy were very obedient. In the next 2 days, Su Len went to inspect the new city. The construction of the new city was very fast. There were many caravans transporting all kinds of materials in the Northern Garrison City every day. All kinds of houses and facilities were also being built in the city. After inspecting the city, Su Len returned to the Northern Garrison City. After returning to the Northern Garrison City, Su Len did not go to other places and directly went to the Qilin Pavilion. After more than 2 months of construction, the Qilin Pavilion was finally completed. Su Len looked at the magnificent building in front of him and nodded with satisfaction. Inside the Qilin Pavilion, there was a circular altar in the center of the Qilin Pavilion's main hall. There were 4 Qilins standing around the altar. These Qilins were of different shapes, but the carvings were vivid and lifelike. The obsidian material was very sturdy. Coming to the center of the altar, Su Len placed the Qilin horn on the altar. As the Qilin horn was placed, a strange energy surged out from the altar. The entire Qilin horn also merged with the altar. A dark golden brilliance pierced through the roof and soared into the sky. After that, it quickly spread to the entire city. At the same time, the system's familiar notification sounded in his ears. Congratulations, host, the construction of the Qilin Pavilion is completed. Qilin Pavilion, Building of Wonders. This is a special building that enshrines the Qilin horn. Having the Qilin Pavilion will bring special benefits to the mounts in your territory. Rapid growth plus 35, sturdiness plus 37, disease reduction plus 33, vitality of dragons and tigers plus 38, indestructible plus 36, bloodline evolution plus 12, taming plus 35, additional effect, Qilin's Might. Qilin's Might, the prestige of the King of Beasts. After activating, the local mounts will be intimidated by the divine beast Qilin's Might. Mount speed -5, there is a 10% chance of causing other mounts to go limp. There is a 15% chance of causing other mounts to retreat. There is a 20% chance of intimidating the enemy and stiffening them for 2 seconds. All enemy mounts speed -5. After seeing the attributes of the Qilin Pavilion, Su Len was also very satisfied. Attributes like rapid growth and sturdiness were still not bad. The most precious attributes were bloodline evolution and Qilin's Might. Bloodline evolution, as the name implied, was able to allow various mounts to undergo bloodline tempering, allowing the bloodline to complete an advancement. Of course, this kind of probability was still very low. However, Su Len suddenly thought of the little female dragon Onyxvia. She should also be considered as a mount. A young red dragon, if her bloodline underwent a mutation, it was estimated that her strength would definitely increase by quite a bit. The little female dragon was originally a pure-blooded huge dragon. If she were to undergo an advancement, what kind of huge dragon would she become? Su Len was also somewhat looking forward to it. Another Qilance might technique. This technique was completely used on the battlefield. Taking advantage of the time when the opponent's cavalry launched an attack, it would directly release a Qilance fury. The charging cavalry would definitely be in a mess and their formation would also be completely messed up in an instant. Using it on the battlefield was completely a huge killing machine and could even be used to control the battle. Chapter 497. North Wind Tower, Treasure Vault. A small mountain of gold was casually piled up on the ground. There were all kinds of gold coins, gold bricks, gold products, and countless gems. At this moment, countless gold coins suddenly slid to the surroundings. A ferocious-looking giant climbed up from the mountain of gold. The fiery red scales emitted a metallic luster. The ferocious-looking bone spikes all indicated that this giant beast was very dangerous. Strange, why do I suddenly feel like I've become stronger? Onyxvia shook her head. Forget it, let's not think about it. It's a good thing to become stronger. Let's go back to sleep. A rain of gold slid down, and the red dragon once again lay down on the mountain of gold and fell asleep. In the military camp's horse farm, tens of thousands of horses were leisurely grazing and running. A strange energy swept past, but most of the horses didn't have any reaction. Only a few horses seemed to have felt something. They raised their heads to look back, but they didn't discover anything. In the palace's luxurious stable, the Pegasus that was eating suddenly quivered. It then raised its head to look around. In the end, other than a gentle breeze, there was no other movement. The Pegasus snorted and then lowered its head to continue eating. After the construction of the Qilin Pavilion was completed, a peculiar energy swept out from here and instantly enveloped the North Town city. Soon after, it disappeared. After Su Luan sensed that there wasn't any abnormality, he left the Qilin Pavilion. All the spectacular buildings in the North Town city were guarded by specialized personnel, and this place was naturally no exception. Although these buildings were magic buildings and were sturdy, it didn't mean that they couldn't be destroyed. In order to protect these buildings, Su Len arranged guards around the buildings. The sky gradually darkened. The early spring weather was still a little cold. The ice and snow melted, and North Town City was about to start the spring plowing. When Su Len returned to the palace, only Angela and his two personal maids were here. Chris had returned to the underground world. A few of the harpies were about to transform, and Alex had gone over to take care of them. Hathaway was still in North Wind Tower to continue her research. Phyllis was in San Filto City. In the end, no one had time to accompany him for a meal. Where are Boulder, Johnson, and Karina? Su Len passed the cape to Angela and asked. The two generals have yet to return from clearing out the bandits. Her Excellency Kalina went to hold a ceremony today. Today is the birthday of the Dark Maiden Elizabeth. The Dark Elves who believe in the Dark Maiden would usually hold a ceremony on this day. Angela said. Sacrificial ceremony? Su Len was stunned for a moment before he realized what was going on. He remembered that Karina had made a request to him after she returned from quelling the rebellion. The Night Elves wanted to resume their sacrifice, and Su Len had agreed to it because he was thinking about other things. I didn't expect it to be ready so soon. Su Len nodded. In the past few years, the Night Elves under his protection were no longer hunted down by others. Their lives had also stabilized, so they picked up the sacrificial ceremony that they had been forced to give up in the past. Sulen basically would not reject such a request. This was not a sacrifice to an evil god. Besides, the Dark Maiden had already fallen. In Sulen's eyes, this was more of a remembrance. Since it would not cause any harm and could gain their favor, why not? Your Majesty, dinner is ready. Do you want to eat now or wait a while? Annie asked. Let them serve it up. Sulen said. Dinner was very simple. Sulen did not emphasize too much on the details of the ceremony. Besides, this was not a formal banquet. Dinner was roasted whole lamb, fruit and vegetable salad, and a bowl of mushroom tripe soup prepared by Frodo. The lamb was fresh and tender. After being roasted by Frodo's master chef and sprinkled with a layer of spices, it tasted great. After dinner, Sulen thought about the Drow's sacrificial ceremony and suddenly wanted to see it for himself. Since he wanted to do it, Sulen gave some instructions. Then he rushed directly to the gathering place of the Drows in the city. The gathering place of the Drows was in the inner city. It was a separate market. The residents living in the inner city were basically Sulen's followers or their relatives. This place was big enough for them to arrange their own residences according to their own preferences. Just like the half-elves, they would usually plant all kinds of trees around their houses. Every house would plant a few purple fir trees and oak trees, so their residences looked like a forest. The living quarters of the barbarians were simple. In addition to the houses, there was a large drill ground. These energetic guys liked to wrestle in the drill ground. The residence of the Drows was not far from the left side of the palace. Their residence was not much different. Some green trees were planted on the periphery, but there was a small altar in the center of the residence. Sulen came to the gathering place of the Drows. At this time, the moon was already in the middle of the sky. A bright silver moon appeared in the sky, and the whole city was plated with moonlight. At this time, a melodious song came from inside. Sulen hesitated and did not knock on the door. He was late this time. The sacrificial ceremony had already begun. In a flash, Sulen went directly into the market. The Drows in the market gathered near the central altar square. Sulen came to the square quietly. As soon as he arrived, Sulen was shocked by the scene in front of him. Under the silver-white moonlight, the entire square became a little hazy. Several Drow girls on the altar were almost naked as they danced under the moonlight. The silver-white moonlight shrouded their bodies, and their smooth and tender skin slightly reflected a fluorescent light. Their ankle-length silver hair was like silver light spilling to the ground. These Drow girls had curvaceous figures and wore tulle. They danced in the moonlight. From a distance, they looked as beautiful as a group of fairies under the moon. The surrounding believers formed a circle under the altar and sang. After a song ended, another Drow girl would begin to dance. Sulen soon found Karina. As the family master of this group of Drows, Karina was also the priest of Dark Maiden Elizabeth. She was also the chief priest. And compared with the other Drows, Karina's figure was more voluptuous. Her long silver hair reached her ankles, and her body was almost naked. But the silver hair just covered the parts of her body. A black tulle was wrapped around her waist, showing a trace of mystery under the night light. Her slender thighs, smooth and tight skin, delicate facial features, and the perfect curves on her body made people's hearts burn. The light dance was intoxicating. With Karina's dance, the whole sacrificial ceremony reached its climax. The silver-white moonlight shrouded the altar, and her curvaceous body looked magnificent under the moonlight. Her silver-white hair fluttered in the wind, making people's hearts sway. However, her song carried a trace of sadness and sorrow that couldn't be dispelled. It was very intoxicating. In fact, if the Dark Maiden hadn't fallen, she would have bestowed power to her followers. Unfortunately, this deity had already fallen. She died in the hands of her mother, the Spider Queen Lolth. It was said that her fall was completely a conspiracy, and a few traitors played a very important role in it. Su Len felt sorry for this god. Although she was a drow, she was a kind god. She protected the kind races in the underground world, and with her fall, the kind races in the underground world would soon be swallowed up and destroyed. The reason why Spider Queen Lolth killed her was to completely integrate the spiritual beliefs of the drows and then find an opportunity to become a powerful god. The master of the realm of demons, the schemer in the multiple planes, finally succeeded. After many years of planning, Spider Queen Lolth successfully promoted to a great divine power in the Battle of Spider Queen. Su Len still had a good impression of the Dark Maiden. This young goddess could only be said to be a tragedy from the moment she was born. The Dark Maiden, Elizabeth, was a god of the good alignment. Her nickname was the Dancing Lady. She lived in the plane of the elven gods and the pit magic network. Her clergy was singing, beauty, dancing, swordsmanship, hunting, and moonlight. The elven gods did not have a good impression of her. The goddess of magic, Mistra, and Su Len, the Lady of Silver Moon, were her allies. She was not a very powerful god, and her position was quite awkward because she was the daughter of the Spider Queen, Lolth. However, her nature was not evil at all. On the contrary, she could be said to be quite kind. Therefore, she had been against her mother for a long time, and most of the time, she lost more than she won. In the end, she died in the hands of her mother. This goddess represented the remaining good of the drows. Her fall also meant that the race had completely fallen into evil. Su Len and Elizabeth still had some common interests. For example, both of them liked music and dancing. However, Su Len liked to listen to others sing and dance, while Elizabeth liked to sing and dance by herself. In addition, both of them were lovers of naked sex. Of course, Elizabeth also liked to run around naked. This was something that Su Len could not do. He preferred to fight naked. Of course, Su Len also liked this kind of sacrificial ceremony very much. From an artistic point of view, the dancing of these drows was very good. After the sacrifice, it was a perfect visual enjoyment. Su Len was intoxicated. With the end of the song, the grand sacrifice was also over. The moonlight still shone on the altar, but the Dark Maiden could not respond to her believers. The drows were a little silent, but they had expected this situation. After the sacrifice, they returned to their houses. Seeing that the sacrifice was over, Su Len also turned into the darkness next to him. After all, he came here without being invited to secretly observe the sacrifice ceremony of these drows. He could not help but feel a little guilty in his heart. After seeing that the sacrifice was over, he planned to sneak away quietly. Chapter 498. Where are you going? Just as Su Len was about to leave, a pleasant voice came from behind him. Su Len's body stiffened. He slowly turned around and was stunned by what he saw. Under the moonlight, Karina's naked body seemed to be covered with a layer of silver sand. Her long silver hair hung in front of her chest, and a black veil wrapped around her waist. Her whole body seemed to be emitting a faint glow. Coupled with her delicate face, she gave Su Len a sense of holiness and seduction. Do I look good? Yes. Su Len came back to his senses and said. By the way, how did you find me? Your eyes are glowing. How can I not see you? Karina rolled her eyes and said. Su Len shrugged. You can't blame me for that. Who knew that your ceremony would be so beautiful? If I had known, would have come. Humph, according to the rules, if it's not for the celebration, the non-drows have to use oil to paint their bodies black and their hair silver. Your attire won't do at all. Karina snorted softly. Paint it black? That's not unacceptable. Su Len hesitated. Come on. I wouldn't dare let you attend. Karina rolled her eyes and said. You haven't eaten yet, right? I'll take you to eat. Sulen reached out and grabbed Karina. Then, in a flash of light, he appeared in the bedroom in the palace. Didn't you say that you're going to eat? Why did you bring me here? Karina said with a seductive look in her eyes. F***ck. Hey, stop, boo-hoo, boo-hoo. Before Karina finished her words, Suluan covered her mouth. Then, there was a series of moaning sounds in the room. The moon in the sky was blocked by a dark cloud. Sulen and Karina were studying spells in the room. Sulen had obtained a few new spell books. The content was a little deep, and he needed to study them together with Karina. The title of the book was Combat Wizard Advancement. The Art of Binding Shadow Tentacles. Lightning Arcana. Evoking Thunder Spear Attack. Among them, Karina, as a drow, was a 4th-grade warlock. She was proficient in shadow spells and had a deep understanding of them. On the other hand, Sulen was proficient in lightning spells and had excellent spear skills. Both of them had their own strengths, so they complemented each other and complemented each other. Early in the morning, Sulen woke up from his sleep and felt a soft fragrance beside him. His heart was slightly stirred. The chocolate from last night was silky, fragrant, and delicious. It was just that he went a little overboard last night, so he couldn't eat chocolate today. As the sun rose, another busy day began. As of now, the expansion of the northern citadel was almost enough to meet the needs of the population. The next step would be to slowly renovate the market and commercial streets. The entertainment center would also need to be opened up. Speaking of which, the entertainment centers in the northern citadel were far inferior to the ones in San Felto. However, some merchants with good taste had come to set up entertainment venues. After all, there were many merchant groups, mercenaries, adventurers, and merchants in northern town city. These people were the main source of consumption. The blacksmith workshop was also expanding. Sulen planned to develop military weapons here on a large scale. The moat of the city was also being renovated. During the planning process, Sulen planned the canal in the city to be smaller. Now, it needed to be widened. With so many merchant groups, it was easy to get congested. At the same time, he planned to build a reservoir in the city to prepare for the future upgrade of the floating city. After the upgrade, the city would definitely need to build a large artificial lake. The artificial lake would provide the city with a water supply and create a perfect water circulation with spells. Wow, these are golems? So strong. They look like clay. How can they move? Amidst the waves of exclamations, the people who had just entered the city for the first time stopped and exclaimed. In front of them, there were many clay golems moving supplies. For ordinary people, golems only existed in the stories of bards. These things that belonged to wizards rarely appeared in front of ordinary people. There was a clay golem production line in the northern citadel. There were so many clay golems that the Northwind Tower and the Secret Realm couldn't use up, so Sulen began to sell them. A clay golem like this was sold for 25,000 kinnar and came with 30 free charges. In fact, the cost of a clay golem was about 10,000 kinnar. Selling one could make 15,000 kinnar. Although the clay golem was not as strong as the rock golem, its labor ability was still very strong. It could easily carry a ton of goods, and it also had some attack power. Many caravans would buy one or two as a front. These clay golems worked seriously and didn't need to rest or eat. If it weren't for the high price, those merchants would definitely buy them on a large scale. Earth, water, wind, and fire. Under Hathaway's suggestion, Sulen made some changes to the layout of the northern citadel. The moat represented water, the harvest altar represented earth, and the blacksmith shop and the golem factory represented fire. Finally, a large air circulation system would be built in the city, which represented the power of air. The air circulation system would use runes to connect to the air plane of the 4 elements. Even in the astral plane, the northern citadel would have fresh air. Ordinary people wouldn't have to worry about lack of oxygen. Of course, after gathering the 4 elements, Hathaway planned to use the power of these elements to build a puzzle that would cover the entire city. Of course, this puzzle was still being designed. In order to build it, at least 2 legendary spellcasters would be needed. Hathaway alone wouldn't be able to do it. However, Sulen wasn't in a hurry. In the northern citadel, besides Alex, there was also Sulen, who had the power to become a legendary wizard. If Karina and Grace also succeeded, then there would be more legendary spellcasters in the northern citadel. Karina was a sorcerer, so it wasn't easy for her to become a sorcerer. Sorcerers were strong in the early stages, but it was difficult to become a sorcerer in the later stages. The blood of the drows came from the blood of the high elves, but they were cursed after the fall of the Spider Queen Lolth. Later, when the Spider Queen Lolth became a greater god, the curse disappeared. Now, the blood of the drows was very thin compared to that of the high elves. However, Sulen still had some things that could improve blood, such as divinity and blood stones. Sulen got 1 blood stone when he killed the Broodmother's eye, but the effect was not obvious. He could only wait and see if he could get a few more in the future. There was a lot of work to do in the northern citadel. Sulen did a simple calculation. After all was done, the northern citadel would need to spend at least 8 to 10 million kinnar. It would take 5 or even 10 years, but it was all worth it. If all was done, the northern citadel would have a mystery lock. With the mystery lock, the northern citadel would not have to worry about being attacked. Only when the mystery lock was broken could the northern citadel be attacked. Southern Plains, Tarbet's province. A small group of valiant knights was galloping on their horses. Columns of smoke could be vaguely seen in the distance. Harumph! Accompanied by the neighing of the warhorse, the leading knight pulled the reins and dismounted. He pulled out the sharp sword at his waist and said in a deep voice, "Be careful. Report to me immediately if there is a situation. Don't act alone." "Yes. Spencer. Take some people to the right side. Bard. Stay here and watch the horses. At the same time, pay attention to the surroundings. If there is anything wrong, send the signal immediately." The village in front of them had already turned into a purgatory. There were many broken corpses scattered on the ground. There were adult soldiers, the old, the weak, women, and children. Obviously, they had all been cruelly tortured when they were alive. Some of the scenes were unbearable even for these battle-hardened knights. The whole village was burned down. The smell of burnt flesh filled the air. There were no living creatures around. The brutality of the murderer shocked the soldiers. Captain Hunt. The wounds on these corpses looked like they were left by claws. A young knight in chainmail walked over and said. Although he looked young, there was a thick layer of calluses on his hands. The chainmail on his body was also damaged. The leading knight raised his head. There was a deep scar on his face. The scar went directly across the right side of his face, making him look extremely ferocious. Captain Hunt looked at the knight and nodded. "These are the marks left by claws. The murderer is very strong. Look at this weapon." As he spoke, Hunt handed over a broken longsword. The longsword was made of fine iron. In fact, it was low-carbon steel. It was sturdy and durable. However, this weapon had been broken in half. The man took the broken sword and held it in his hand. He then picked up a tree trunk and chopped it. With a crack, the tree trunk was cut in half. Not bad. It is much stronger than the standard weapons of the kingdom. Now that it has been damaged like this, the enemy must be very strong, Captain Hunt said slowly. What kind of monster is this? Could it be a magical beast? The young man asked. Captain Hunt shook his head. His eyes were alert as he looked around. The probability of a magical beast is not high. Even if a magical beast attacked a town, it would not kill everyone. Look at these corpses. They are all in the village. If a magical beast came, even if they could not defeat it, they would have fled into the mountains. There is no way so many people died. This is more like a massacre. A massacre? Yes, a massacre. Look at the corpses and blood. This was done on purpose. Captain, there is something here. At this moment, a shout came from not far away. Hunt immediately rushed over with a few men. Chapter 499. A strong knight hurried over and handed a scale-like object to Hunter. This is a kind of scale. It's very tough. I've never seen such a tough scale before. I suspect it's a dragon scale. Hunter took the scale and looked at it. It was a dark red scale about the size of a human eye. There was also a shallow scar on the sword. Hunter took a look and hurriedly picked up the broken sword he had picked up earlier. He compared it with the sword and found that it was a perfect fit. What a tough scale. Boss, I was right, wasn't I? This must be a dragon scale. The knight said proudly. Dragon scale my ass. Hunter scolded. Have you seen a dragon scale? If it was really done by a dragon, let alone this place, even the castle would have been razed to the ground. There wouldn't be a village like this. But this enemy is also very strong. Boss, what are these enemies? The knight asked. I don't know. There have been several massacres in the Abotes province recently, and the victims were all in these relatively remote villages. Even now, we still haven't caught those people. Hunter coldly replied. Hunter picked up the scale and sniffed it. He frowned. The smell of blood is mixed with a strong smell of sulfur. These damn things are probably demons from the lower realm. Demons. You're saying that it's a devil? Spencer exclaimed in horror. Calm down, Spencer. Spencer. Hunter looked at him and said, they're gone now. The higher-ups have received news that some of the fallen have held a sacrificial ceremony and summoned the demons here. The power of evil has begun to infiltrate our world. Hunter suddenly moved. In an instant, those lifeless corpses suddenly rushed towards him as if they had come back to life. A cold light flashed, and the cold blade instantly cut the corpses that were rushing towards him in half. Thud. It was like cutting rotten wood. A resurrected undead was killed by the knight on the spot. Following the first undead's attack, the surrounding corpses immediately attacked. These undead might be useful against normal people, but against these well-trained knights, their only use was to dirty their weapons and armor. Kill all these undead. Spencer said in a low voice. The knights in the surroundings who were always on guard brandished their swords and rushed forward. Their speed was very fast and their explosive power was amazing. These ordinary undead were not the opponents of these knights. All the undead in front of these knights were instantly beheaded. In just 5 minutes, dozens of undead were completely annihilated by these knights. After the last undead was killed, Hunter tore a piece of cloth from the corpse and wiped the blood off the weapon. He then ordered, kill all the corpses and cut off their heads. Gather them all together and burn them. Yes. The knights next to him replied. Remember to tell the priests to come here and purify this place. So many people died, and they were turned into undead by the demons. This place is very polluted. If we don't purify it, more undead will be born. In fact, these undead were not created by the demons. This world had supernatural powers. Under normal circumstances, areas with strong negative energy had a high chance of giving birth to undead. In a place like this where demons had appeared, and so many people had died, the negative energy in the surroundings had long gone off the charts. If this place was not cleaned up, the undead would be haunted for a long time. Everyone else, pack up. We're leaving. We have to find this monster before it destroys the next village. Head Night Hunter said as he mounted his horse. Soon, another bonfire was lit in the village, and the smell of dead bodies spread out. These people did not stay any longer. Once again, they galloped into the distance. It seemed like there was a dark shadow in the dark that was looking for them somewhere else. The fallen seemed to be carrying out some kind of evil sacrifice. They had to stop it before it got worse. A group of people quickly mounted their horses. Accompanied by the sound of hooves, these knights continued to follow the traces left by the enemy. In the past 2 years, the fallen and the evil cultists had become more and more active. Especially after the war last year, many places were destroyed by the war. Some evil creatures from the abyss gradually appeared. The purge last year caused many nobles to suffer heavy losses. Many nobles' territories could not bear the burden. Fortunately, the power of the temples was still there. With the help of these temples, the overall situation was still stable. San Filto City. After receiving professional training and ideological and political education, Phyllis continued to send these people to various cities and territories. If it were not for the lack of manpower, Phyllis would have sent these people with the army. Now, she could only send a group of soldiers to protect them. Fortunately, after the previous war, no one dared to go against the king's orders. Otherwise, many of these officials would have died of illness or been killed by bandits before they could reach their destination. Now that Su Len was there, these people naturally would not dare to do such a thing. If you dared to let an official die of illness, Su Len would dare to kill your entire family. North City. After Sullen's promotion, he entered a period of stability. He now needed to stabilize his strength as soon as possible. As for the 9 transformation golden pill, he could not use it for the time being. He still had 2 9 transformation golden pills in his hand, and he gave them to Chris and Alex respectively. The effect of the 9 transformation golden pill was very powerful. The strength of the 2 had been improved again, but it would take some time for them to advance. Although Karina didn't have the 9 turns golden pill, Su Luan had given her the bloodstone. The bloodstone could increase the concentration of one's bloodline. For a drow like Karina, it could purify her bloodline, enhance her potential, and increase her chances of becoming a legend. The shackles of advancing into the legendary realm were very firm. Otherwise, out of the tens of millions of people in Florence, only less than 10 people had successfully advanced into the legendary realm. The realm below the legendary realm was completely different. If those below the legendary realm were only powerful extraordinaries, then the legendary realm was a transition of life and race. While Su Len stabilized his strength, he also cleared his consciousness of the participating divinity. He did not want to devour a large amount of divinity and become a lunatic with a chaotic mind. During the break, Hathaway found a job for Su Len. The new year had begun, and the Northwind Tower needed to continue recruiting students. The Northwind Tower needed a large number of people, so the best way was to recruit apprentices. In the past year, there had been a lot of new immigrants in North City. There were also many children who had reached the age to take the test. Although the number was not as many as last time, Su Len planned to take the test in San Filto City at the same time. This time, Hathaway made a special test crystal ball. Alex had a lot of winged people to help, so a test team was quickly formed. The test crystal ball was easy to operate and had a high accuracy rate. After some simple training, these people began to work. The Northwind Duchy was very efficient. After Su Len gave the order, a large number of workers began to move. When the serfs, civilians, and freedmen learned that the wizard aptitude test was going to be held in North City, they immediately brought their children over. After all, this was a wizard test. Noble, mysterious, powerful, and rich wizards. As long as one became a wizard, the serfs would immediately be treated as freedmen, and the civilians and freedmen could even become citizens. This was a chance to reach the sky in a single bound. In the entire city, as long as there were families with children of suitable age, they immediately brought their children to the city square for the test. Fortunately, there were enough grassroots officials in North City. At the same time, the test time had been divided into different areas, so it was not too crowded. Many merchants who came to Northern Town City for business all expressed their willingness to donate funds to support the development of Northern Town City. Their only request was for their sons and nephews to come forward and sign up. Su Len certainly would not refuse this kind of thing, but he would not agree so easily either. If one wanted to be qualified, they would need to donate a sum of money first. After that, they would need to go through a political review. After passing both, they could take the test and join the Northwind Academy. At the same time, Su Len sent a message to Phyllis, asking her to count the number of children of suitable age in Sanfilto City in advance. After the Northwind Duchy finished the test, they would go to Sanfilto City for the test. The Northwind Academy was just a newly established magic academy, so there was a serious shortage of mentors. They could not use the teaching method of a mentor teaching a few apprentices like other wizard organizations, so they could only use a large class. However, considering that North City did not need a few talented wizards, this kind of teaching method was acceptable. At the same time, this kind of teaching method had its advantages. For example, in the same class, the talented and untalented apprentices would be able to show off very quickly. After a while, after a few simple tests, they would be able to distinguish the outstanding ones among the apprentices. At the same time, they would be able to understand the personality of the apprentices through these observations. After a period of time, the most outstanding apprentices would be selected, and then the mentors would choose from them. These people would be the focus of training. As for the rest of the apprentices, the Northwind Academy would not just give up. They would also continue to teach them knowledge and provide them with resources. After all, sometimes talent did not guarantee success. Sometimes, luck was also very important. Chapter 500. There were nearly 2,000 children in Northern Town City who were tested this time. After the test, only 11 of them had the potential to become a wizard. However, these children had not learned any knowledge at all. They couldn't even write their own names. Su Luan also needed to arrange cultural teachers for these children to let them learn knowledge first. If they hadn't learned this knowledge, they wouldn't understand the basic knowledge of wizards at all. Su Len had no choice but to arrange for teachers to teach these children. After the test in the Northern Wind Duchy, Su Len brought the winged people to Sanfilto City for testing. Sanfilto City had a population of about 200,000. It was a big city in this era. Compared to the northern city, the education level in Sanfilto City was much higher. Although it had been purged several times, there were still many nobles in Sanfilto City. At the same time, there were also many merchants. After a few days of screening, more than 30 children were found to have the potential to be a wizard. Among them, more than 10 children came from well-off families. They were either nobles or rich merchants. They had already gone to school for a while and could directly start their apprenticeship education. However, this didn't mean that the children of nobles or merchants had an advantage in becoming a wizard. In fact, Su Len never liked to deal with nobles. Their environment made them used to scheming against each other. The most important thing on the path of magic was focus and hard work. Living in such a family environment, those children would also be influenced by what they saw and heard, and they would also be infected with all kinds of problems. These children's minds were too complicated. Many of them were spoiled since they were young and couldn't adapt to the heavy learning of a wizard. Among the apprentices taught by wizards, those who were born ordinary were more likely to achieve something. For example, Hathaway was adopted by her teacher since she was young. She didn't have any contact with nobles, nor did she mix with other noble ladies. She was used to the superficiality, vanity, and arrogance of those noble ladies. Therefore, she was very focused on the path of a wizard. However, being born a noble also had a big advantage. They had a solid foundation and rich knowledge. Some of them even had the blessing of inherited bloodlines. They could take on the role of a sorcerer when they became a wizard. Those wizards who weren't born in a good family might not be able to improve their strength quickly, but they could at least reach the level of a high-grade wizard in the end. As for whether he could advance to the legendary stage, no one dared to guarantee it. After all, the threshold of the legendary realm was a barrier to many geniuses. There was a saying that went, "Master can show you the way, but cultivation depends on the individual." For many people, the legend rank was the end, but for Su Len, the legend rank was the true starting point. To wizards, becoming a legend was like opening the door to the multiverse. Only when one reached the legendary level could one travel between planes and leave this world. Southern Plains, Tarbet's province. In a noble's territory near the Corinthe Mountains in the northwest, a noble's castle appeared on a hill. A group of travel-worn knights stopped outside the fortress, causing the guards to grip their weapons nervously. This was just a small baron's castle. There were only 20 guards in total. Although it was called a castle, it was actually a solid stone house with an area of more than 300 square meters. Looking at the appearance of the castle, it was at least a few hundred years old. After a long period of peace, this kind of castle, which was more for military purposes than residential purposes, was rarely inhabited by nobles in the south. In contrast, they preferred to live in their own prosperous manners. But for some unknown reason, the baron's family suddenly moved from the comfortable manor to this cold and gloomy castle. Why are those people coming here? The leader of the guard saw a group of knights running from afar. As the distance closed, he soon saw the flag of the knights clearly. There was a sharp sword on the flag, with a snake wrapped around it and a circle of thorns around it. This was the insignia of Count Cromwell. Soon, the group of knights that looked unusually valiant gradually approached the castle. Even from a distance, he could feel the strong murderous aura of the other party. As a retired veteran, he was all too familiar with this kind of aura. "Quick, quick, pick up your weapons and be on guard." The leader of the guard's expression changed drastically. This group of knights seemed to be coming with ill intentions. He immediately notified the soldiers to be on guard, but his approach seemed to be completely useless. How could these untrained guards, who bullied the weak and feared the strong, be a match for these battle-hardened knights? They could probably take down the castle with a single charge. "Halt! This is the dominion of Baron Brent. Who are you? Stop immediately, or we'll shoot." As soon as the leader of the guards finished speaking, more than 10 guards knocked their arrows and took aim at the knights. However, judging from the power of the wooden bows in their hands, it was no doubt impossible for them to shoot through the knights' armor. The knights in front of them were all wearing gray cloaks. Most of them had their faces covered with hoods, only the outline of their chins could be seen. They were clad in exquisitely forged armor with a layer of chain mail underneath. With such elite warriors equipped with double layers of armor, normal arrows would be ineffective against them. At the same time, the knights were also equipped with long swords, crossbows, throwing knives, gauntlets, boots, and so on. Even the most elite soldiers of Rhodes City, the leader of the guards, didn't have such a complete set of equipment. Furthermore, they all seemed to be of high quality. Some of them were using heavy weapons that were difficult to control. Such weapons required a high level of control. Only an expert would be able to use such a weapon, otherwise it would be easy to injure oneself. "Leader, who are these knights? Are we really going to fight them?" asked a smaller guard in a low voice. Judging from their banners, they should be Count Cromwell's knights. "But what are they doing here?" asked the leader of the guards. "Did the king order them to capture Baron Brent?" During this period of time, there were many nobles who were imprisoned. The reason was naturally a rebellion. The king was purging the nobles who stood on the wrong side. Could it be that Baron Brent was also one of the targets? The leader of the guards broke out in cold sweat at the thought of that. The battle last year had completely shattered the confidence of the southern nobles. Even if they wanted to rebel, there wouldn't be many who would follow them. Under the castle. Knight Hunt dismounted from his horse and placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. He felt the coldness of the metal on the hilt of his sword. He turned around and said, "That demon is nearby. Be careful. Have our reinforcements arrived yet?" The burly man beside him shook his head and said in a low voice, "Not yet. But based on my calculations, they should be here soon." Although the knights were strong, the wizards and priests of the church were better at dealing with demons. Demons also had many spell-like abilities. It wouldn't be easy to rely on the knights alone to deal with them. Along the way, they came across another 2 villages that had been slaughtered. Even if they rushed, they still couldn't catch up to the demon. Sensing that the situation was getting more and more serious, Captain Hunt became more and more uneasy. Thus, he decisively sent someone to ask for help from the temple and the earl. As the archenemy of the demons, the temple would immediately send reinforcements after realizing the severity of the situation. Likewise, the earl would also send a wizard to help. "Something's not right," said the leader of the guards as he looked around. The burly knight beside him looked around and asked, "Boss, what's wrong? Isn't this normal? Are you worried about those weaklings in the castle? As long as you give the order, I can rush up and squash them to death. It's not those people. It's too quiet here. The negative energy is too strong," said Hunt in a serious tone. "Yeah, there's no sound of insects. There aren't even any birds around. This is too strange. Don't worry about that. Let's go and ask the lord of this castle. He's the boss here. He should be able to help us." All right. Soon, the knights finished their discussion. Head Knight Hunt looked around the castle and waved to another young knight. "Hans, you go and talk to them." "Yes, boss." Inside the castle. When the knights requested to enter the castle to see Baron Brent, the leader of the guards let out a sigh of relief. As long as it wasn't the king's doing, it wouldn't be a big problem. As for the fact that there were demons here and they wanted to see Baron Brent, it was fine. As for the demons, Hunt and the other knights were here to deal with them. It was fine as long as they were here. Thinking of this, he quickly sent someone to report to Baron Brent. A few minutes later, a servant hurried over. "What did you say?" "The Baron refused to let them in. And he wants them to leave immediately. Otherwise, he wants us to attack." The leader of the guards couldn't believe his ears. "Is he crazy or did I hear wrong? Do you know who those people are? They're a whole team of knights, and the leader is a knight. You want us to attack these knights? If you want to die, don't drag us down with you." The servant said coldly. "You are the knight's guards. You should listen to his orders. Now, go and do as he says." Hearing this, the guard captain's face became gloomy and uncertain. This order was clearly to send them to their deaths. Being a guard was only a profession, and the Baron didn't pay him much salary. He had elders and children to take care of, so he didn't need to risk his life. Thinking of this, he made a decision in his heart. Chapter 501. The guard captain had followed Baron Brent for 10 years. Naturally, he knew some of Baron Brent's secrets. This time, the Baron hid in this remote castle on the surface to avoid the epidemic. However, the real reason was that he was afraid of being punished for his actions in the future, so he hid here. Now, it was obvious that the Baron was preparing to fight back. However, judging from the current strength of the knights, they would be nothing more than fodder. "I order you. Shoot the arrows." Seeing the leader of the guards hesitating, the Baron's personal guard's face became even more stern. However, he didn't expect his voice to be so loud that the knights outside the castle could hear him. "Boss, they want to attack. Should we?" Spencer looked at the castle not far away and said to Hunter. At the same time, he made a chopping gesture. The knights were not obedient children who would not fight back. Moreover, these people wanted to attack them. Hunter coldly looked at the personal guard on the castle wall. He then waved his hand at the knights behind him. "Attack!" The knights who were already prepared immediately pulled out their weapons and rushed forward. At this time, the leader of the guards on the castle wall had not made up his mind to attack. "Captain, this is bad. The knights are attacking." Just when the Baron's personal guard's patience was at its limit, a guard suddenly shouted. The knights were very fast. 2 of them rushed to the castle gate and jumped off their horses. They had already jumped onto the suspension bridge and swung their swords at the chains of the suspension bridge. Large amounts of sparks flew out of the rusty chains and a deep cut was left on it. Then, the 2 knights turned their swords and slashed at the chains again. Within a breath's time, they had already slashed at the chains 5 to 6 times. Finally, after a series of screeching sounds, the chains holding the suspension bridge were broken in half. Then, the suspension bridge fell to the ground with a loud crash. A few knights who were already prepared rushed up the moment the drawbridge fell. These knights held heavy battering hammers and smashed down on the city gate. Boom! A loud sound was heard. A large amount of dust fell from the gap of the castle gate and a deep mark immediately appeared on the castle gate. The guard captain's expression changed when he saw that the knights had broken the suspension bridge in just a few moments. If a battle really broke out, it would only take a single sword strike to deal with him. Wasn't this just courting death? However, the situation in front of him did not allow him to refuse. He gritted his teeth and directly ordered, "Release the arrows." Then, he quietly took a step back. If there was anything wrong with this posture, he would immediately turn around and run. Bang bang bang. More than a dozen arrows flew out, but the knights didn't even look at them. They knocked the arrows away with their swords. Then, he took out a javelin and threw it directly at the city wall. Before the guards could react, they felt a pain in their chests and their bodies flew backward. Then, their consciousness fell into endless darkness. What a piece of trash! The attendant spoke coldly when he saw the guards' actions. Suddenly, his expression changed, and then he roared furiously, "You actually dared to flee! Die!" A ray of cold light shot out. The bodyguard captain who had just run a few steps suddenly stiffened and then fell to the ground. A long sword was pulled out of his chest and blood flowed out. Boom! The castle's wooden gate had been in disrepair for a long time and couldn't withstand such a torment. After a few more hits, it collapsed. Without the gate, the castle was unobstructed. The guards saw that the situation was not good and scattered like birds and beasts. The knights easily rushed in. After rushing into the castle, the knights didn't stop and directly rushed inside. At this moment, the Baron's attendant rushed over again with his men. Both sides didn't show any courtesy when they met. They waved their swords and rushed forward. At this moment, the Baron's attendant in the lead roared. His body suddenly grew by more than 10 centimeters. The clothes on his body were directly torn, revealing dark red scales. Bang! A loud sound of metal clashing was heard. The knight in the lead was directly sent flying. The long sword in his hand had a deep cut. A fallen one. At this time, the others clearly saw the appearance of the Baron's attendant. It was a humanoid monster with dark red scales all over his body. He was tall, about 2.5 meters. There was also a layer of scales on his ferocious face. His eyes were blood red, and there was a sharp horn on his head. There were also some bones growing out of his joints. His body was filled with the smell of blood and sulfur. A demonic human. Damn it, I should have known. Seeing the monster's appearance, Hunter's face changed and his eyes became even colder. A demonic human was simply a fallen one who had sacrificed to the devil. After receiving the power of the devil, this person's strength would increase exponentially and their body would also be demonized. At first, the demonization wouldn't be serious, but as the power of the devil continued to corrode their body would begin to transform into a devil. This transformation from the soul to the body was completely irreversible. At the same time, after receiving the power of the devil, one's personality would change greatly. They would become cruel, bloodthirsty, and chaotic, so very few people would do this. Even if these demonic humans died, they would fall into the bottomless abyss and be sent to the blood pool in the abyss by the river Styx to become a true devil. Everyone, be careful. They are demonic humans. Hunter warned and then rushed out with his sword. These demonic humans were blocking the way outside, so there must be something very important inside. What could make them think it was important? Nothing more than sacrificing or summoning a devil. For fallen ones, this was an opportunity to increase their strength. Hunter and the others naturally knew this. The situation was urgent, so Hunter directly used his full strength. The life force in his body was stimulated to the extreme. His sword glowed with a bright light and a powerful wind pressure swept out. In an instant, he collided with the demonic human. The powerful force caused the tall demonic human to take a step back. Hunter didn't stop there and quickly appeared beside the demonic human. The sharp sword in his hand slashed horizontally. Blood splattered as the demonic human's arm was cut off at the elbow. Ah! Intense pain came, and the demonic human's originally bloodshot eyes became crazed. The demonic human's other hand grabbed the sword and slashed at Hunter, but the experienced Hunter had already dodged in advance. His body turned and he was already on the left side of the demonic human. In the next second, a cold light flashed, and the demonic human's head flew up in an instant. Scorching hot blood spurted out. With full strength, Hunter killed the demonic human in 3 moves. For a moment, the morale of the surrounding knights was greatly boosted. However, the remaining demonic humans were not afraid. Their blood-red eyes were filled with madness, and they roared and rushed forward. The battle became even more intense. In the northern city, Sulen looked at the boys and girls between the ages of 10 and 16 in front of him and secretly nodded in his heart. This batch of apprentices had recruited about 50. There were nobles, poor people, and even slaves. Of course, these identities were already in the past. They would be the second batch of apprentices of the Northwind Tower. The Northwind Academy that Sulen had organized had been completed long ago. It was right next to the Sorcerer Tower. Hathaway purposely drew an energy channel from the elemental pool to connect it to the academy. The concentration of elemental energy in the academy was very high. The instructors of the Northwind Academy were still Locke and Andre. Occasionally, Karina, Grace, and Alex would come for a class or two. In addition to learning about sorcery, they were also taught cultural knowledge. Although there were not many instructors in the Northwind Academy, each one of them was very powerful. The weakest of the instructors here was a 4th-rank wizard, and the principal was a legendary wizard. It could be said that in terms of strength, the academy was one of the best in the entire continent. However, strength did not equate to education. The Northwind Academy's education level was probably in the lower middle of the continent. Congratulations! From today onwards, you are all official apprentices of the Northwind Academy. The door to the world of magic has officially opened for you. Sulen looked at the excited children in front of him and laughed in his heart. Be happy, this might be the most relaxing time you've had since you entered the academy. Among you are poor people, nobles, merchants, and even slaves. These are not important in the academy. There is only one thing to do here, and that is to learn all kinds of sorcery knowledge and become a true wizard. So, put away your tempers. Su Len swept his gaze over the excited crowd. In an instant, they became anxious and fearful. In a while, someone will tell you the rules and regulations of the academy, as well as the punishment if you violate them. I hope you will abide by them. Learning in the Sorcerer Academy is not free. The first year is for the adaptation period, so the academy will bear the cost. However, from the second year onwards, you will have to do missions and earn money to pay for your tuition. You should know that cultivating a wizard is very costly. All kinds of experiments, training, and so on require a lot of resources. You will have to earn these resources yourself, so work hard. Su Len finished and left the place, leaving the other instructors to explain to them. Su Len, on the other hand, looked at the seniors of these apprentices. The previous batch of apprentices were busy with their work. There was a lot of basic work in the Sorcerer Tower for them to complete. To these apprentices, the instructors were not polite at all. Every day, apart from studying, they also had a lot of work. Their study and work time exceeded 18 hours. In order to make these apprentices energetic, Hathaway specially prepared energy potions for them. Energy potions were free. After drinking a bottle of energy potion, these apprentices would be full of energy and naturally have the energy to work. If it were not for the fact that energy potions could not be taken consecutively, Su Len planned to let these apprentices continue to study. Chapter 502. After walking around the Northwind Tower, it was getting late. Su Len was thinking about who he should talk to tonight about the truth of magic. Hathaway was still in seclusion, and Karina was busy absorbing blood stones to purify her bloodline. Alex should be in the eagle's nest. That left Phyllis and Chrissy. After thinking for a while, Su Luen decided to study with Chris today. When he thought of the succubus, Su Len thought of the two little horns on her head. Compared to the reins, the steering wheel was much better. Besides, the succubus had both the reins and the steering wheel. Phyllis would have to wait until she awakened more of her red dragon bloodline and grew out her dragon horns before she could compete with Chrissy. After making up his mind, Su Len did not waste any more time. He turned around and went to study with Chrissy. An eagle descended from the sky and landed in a remote courtyard in the city. An ordinary-looking young man removed the bamboo tube tied to the eagle's leg and carefully opened it. After examining it, his expression changed slightly. He immediately put the tube back together and hurriedly went to the eagle house to pick the strongest eagle. After tying the bamboo tube properly, he took out some fresh meat and fed it. When the eagle was full, the young man immediately released it. The eagle spread its wings and soared into the sky. After circling in the sky once, it flew in the direction of Northtown City. A group of people in black robes rushed out of the passage. They were all wrapped in black robes. Their eyes were as red as blood, and there was a hint of madness in them. Stop these people. The ceremony to sacrifice to our master must not be interrupted. Our master will grant us eternal life and power. The people in black robes were completely unafraid of death. They shouted loudly and blocked the path of Hunter and the other knights. There were all kinds of people in this group. Not only were there powerful servants, there were also demon warlocks with strange means. There were also men, women, and children. The only thing they had in common was that they were completely unafraid of death. They were all expressionless and used their lives to stop the knights from approaching. This is not good. These people are crazy. Be careful. Seeing the frenzied crowd, Hunter, Spencer, and the others were shocked. These people had all worshipped the devil and obtained the devil's power. Their strength varied, but they all had one thing in common: they were not afraid of death. A gloomy and cold aura enveloped the surroundings. This aura was filled with madness, bloodlust, and destruction. It constantly stimulated the wills of these knights. This power suppressed the knights' hearts and imperceptibly weakened their strength. Evil spirit energy. A strange aura swept across, and all of the knights instantly felt a gloomy and cold energy. This energy made their bodies feel heavy, and a chaotic murmur sounded in their ears. It was very uncomfortable. Even though they were warriors with strong wills and had been through hundreds of battles, some of them gradually became confused. This is the whisper of a demon. Cover your ears. Night Hunter yelled at the top of his lungs. The roar immediately woke up the confused knights, but the fallen ones would not let go of such a heaven-sent opportunity. They launched an attack one after another. Two knights who had just recovered from their daze were hacked to death by the surrounding fallen ones as soon as they raised their heads. Gain! A knight next to him roared and rushed forward. A cold light flashed, and the head of one of the fallen ones was chopped off. The two knights next to him cooperated well and killed a few of the fallen ones around them in an instant. The knight picked Gain up and covered his bleeding wound with one hand. He quickly poured potions into his companion's mouth with the other hand. However, this kind of serious injury could only be healed by a high-grade wizard or a powerful priest. Ordinary potions were useless. Don't waste it. Be careful. Help me, give this to Tia. The knight's powerful physique prevented him from dying on the spot. The knight named Guyan grabbed his hand tightly and spoke with great difficulty. After seeing that the knight had agreed to his request, the knight lowered his hand and looked at the mottled amulet in his hand silently. Then, he gently placed it on the ground. Don't worry, Gain. I will avenge you. Kill all these sons of bitches. The knight did not have time to be sad. As an elite knight who had experienced hundreds of battles, he had seen too many deaths. However, when he saw his companion die, his heart was still filled with anger and sadness. This was his best friend, who had saved his life twice on the battlefield. His son was only 3 years old. Javelins. Crossbows. Quick. The fierce battle did not give them any time to be sad. Faced with so many fallen ones, they could only keep fighting. This kind of haul was perfect for arrows and javelins. These fallen ones had nowhere to hide. Whoosh! 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 Javelins flew out and pierced through the chests of the fallen ones. The small crossbows were activated, and the fine iron arrows pierced through the bodies of the fallen ones. The arrows and javelins turned into shadows, and the fallen ones were killed in an instant. The surrounding knights also put down their crossbows and rushed forward again. Head Night Hunter took out a potion and poured it into his mouth. A gust of wind element immediately surrounded him, and his body became extremely light. Even his heavy armor became as light as a feather. Gale Potion. It was a powerful magic potion that could slightly increase the user's strength and speed after use. Head Night Hunter's speed was so fast that it could not be seen with the naked eye. He shot out like a ghost, and at this moment, he was even faster than the rogues who focused on speed. Blood splattered in the air, and the fallen ones who were not afraid of death fell one after another. All of the enemies were killed in one hit. Quick! Charge! The ritual is almost complete. We have to stop them. Spencer waved his sword and rushed forward. The other knights followed closely behind. The knights were very familiar with each other. Their formation was already broken by Head Night Hunter, and now they were being crushed by the other knights. The whole castle was covered by a cold, evil, and chaotic energy. This energy was constantly affecting the others, and it was constantly attacking the knights' consciousness. The whispers of demons sounded in their ears, and many of the knights showed a painful expression. Head Night Hunter made a prompt decision: you guys stay outside. Spencer and I will go in. If the two of us can't handle it, you guys run for your lives. You must send the message back. After a round of fighting, the fallen ones were all dead. There was no one in front of them, and they quickly rushed inside. Bang! The gorgeous wooden door was smashed into pieces, and a strong smell of blood filled their noses. That direction, quick! Spencer immediately identified the direction where the smell of blood was coming from. He then pointed at a tunnel not far away. Head Night Hunter did not stop and quickly rushed into the passage. After another door was smashed, a gloomy altar appeared in front of them. The ground was covered with sticky blood, and the surrounding walls were covered with horrifying paintings. Demons were laughing in the sky, and many fallen ones were offering sacrifices to them. These demons used all kinds of methods to kill the sacrifices and then enjoyed the flesh and blood of the sacrifices. The whole hall was filled with red light. When they entered, a strong smell of negative energy mixed with the smell of sulfur, and the whispers of the demons around them became more serious. On the altar was a pile of human organs, and the two knights frowned. Ha ha ha! You're too late. Master has arrived. Offer your flesh, blood, and soul. Become Master's food. And I will receive the power and eternal life bestowed upon me by my Master. You dogs, I will kill you little by little. And that damn king, I will cut off his flesh and feed it to the dogs. I will take back everything I've lost. A noble laughed crazily. He had a handsome face, and although he looked to be in his 40s, he was still very charming. He was wearing a black priest's robe, and he looked at the altar crazily. A teleportation gate quickly took shape on the altar. The dark red gate looked as if it had been dyed in blood. Immediately after, a ferocious arm covered in scales reached out from the gate. A strong evil energy instantly covered the whole hall. Even though they were warriors who had been through hundreds of battles, they still felt very depressed when faced with this aura. Ha ha ha, Master has arrived. I am your most loyal servant, Brent. Please grant me great power and eternal life. The middle-aged noble immediately knelt on the altar and prayed crazily. His expression was as if he was on a pilgrimage. Great Master, you will be the master of this world. All enemies will cry at your feet. Ah! Master! No! At this time, an ugly head came out of the portal. He waved his arm and grabbed the man's head directly. Then, a large amount of blood and flesh were extracted. The handsome noble in front of him was turned into a corpse in the blink of an eye. The essence of the flesh and blood made the portal expand again, and it became more than 3 meters tall in the blink of an eye. The demon had 2 goat-like horns on its head, and it looked ugly. Only half of its body was exposed, but the two knights felt a strong sense of oppression. The portal was more than 3 meters tall, and it was on the verge of collapsing. Seeing this, Hunter rushed forward without hesitation, but it was obviously too late. The demon forced its way out of the portal. Human. Flesh and soul. Material plane. Ha ha ha, I'm here. Chapter 503. Northern Town. Sulen climbed out of bed energetically after a night of being a knight. The battle last night did not affect him at all. His reputation as the Thunderstorm Spear King was not undeserved. The arrival of the new apprentices made the Northern Wind Tower a little busy. Fortunately, they were already experienced, so it was not a problem for them to deal with it. There was another important matter in Northern Town for the next 2 days, and that was the spring plowing. Northern Town was located in the northern wasteland. Winter was long, and spring came 1 or 2 months later than other provinces. That was why spring plowing only began at this time. As an agricultural country, spring plowing was a very important event. In some countries, the king would personally plow the fields to announce the start of spring plowing. Although Northern Town's event was not as exaggerated, it was still necessary to hold a grand ceremony. With the help of Angela and Annie, Su Luan put on a hunting suit, and then rode the Pegasus to the central square with his guards. At this time, the central square was crowded with people. The arrival of spring plowing made the whole city vibrant. Spring plowing was the hope of everyone in northern town. It was the lifeblood of the farmers. The grand celebration made northern town city look very lively. The caravans from all over the world could feel the joy and prosperity here. The solemn statues, the neat and clean roads, the blooming flowers on both sides of the roads, the beautiful fountains in the parks and squares, and the energetic citizens of northern town city. Children were running quickly with simple toys in their hands. A group of dwarves were cheering loudly with wine glasses raised high in the air. Young girls were singing and dancing in the crowd. On the other side of the square, there were many half-elves performing. From time to time, a beautiful magic firework would rise. Powerful warriors wearing excellent armor and weapons could be seen in every corner of the city. There were even drows among these warriors. The merchants who came here were greatly shocked. They followed the crowd and walked on the streets, feeling the prosperity and vitality of the city. As merchants who often traveled to different cities, they were basically knowledgeable. It was not that they had never seen a city that was more prosperous than northern town. However, in terms of cleanliness, no city could compare to northern town. It wasn't just the streets. Even the commoners in the city were the same. The commoners here were completely different from the commoners they had seen in other places. In other cities, including the capital cities of powerful kingdoms, the commoners were still sickly and dispirited. Their clothes were tattered and emitted a foul smell. Their hair was messy, and there were even lice and other insects crawling around. Their clothes were dirty and messy, and they looked lethargic. Their eyes were apathetic, and there wasn't a hint of vitality in them. The citizens of Northern Town City had completely broken their understanding of the common people. Although their clothes were tattered, they were very clean. Everyone's hair was very clean. They looked very energetic, and there was no smell on them. What surprised them even more was that their eyes were full of hope. They loved life, and they were very supportive of their lord. They were full of vitality. In other cities, very few nobles would allow such a large-scale celebration. Most of them would only celebrate in the noble district. If they were in a good mood, they would give out some black bread to the citizens. That way, they would be praised as a kind lord. Most of them would not even care about the lives of the citizens. This spring plowing celebration was hosted by Su Luan in person. Not only the officials of the North Town City, but also many caravans that had trade relations with the North Town City were invited. Of course, there were more merchants who didn't have invitations. The news of Northern Town City building a wizard tower and having a legendary wizard had already spread across the human kingdoms. It had even begun to spread across the entire continent. Many merchants and nobles had heard that Northern Town City was recruiting wizard apprentices. They all hoped that their children could come here to study. Ever since the elemental tide had arrived, the chances of children awakening their wizard talent had obviously increased. As the elemental tide became stronger, more and more children would awaken their wizard talent. Most of the sorcerer organizations on the continent only recruited students once every 10 years. The last time they recruited students was only 3 years ago. Even the most recent recruitment date for a sorcerer academy was 5 years later. Many children who had awakened their potential to become a sorcerer couldn't wait that long. The best time to train a magus was between the ages of 10 to 16. After this time, the difficulty of becoming an official magus would increase by several times. The nobles were not willing to let their children waste this opportunity. At the same time, after the situation in Northern Town City had completely stabilized, many mercenaries and adventurers had started to make a living here. Mercenaries and adventurers sounded nice, and they often appeared in the epic stories told by traveling poets. However, what was the reality? Most of these people were poor. They had no land and no jobs. They were only slightly better off than slaves. When they heard that gold was everywhere in Northern Town City, they all came to make a fortune. Some of them joined the army of Northern Town City and applied to become citizens of the city. Some of them wanted to make a fortune and started to explore the wasteland. In order to become a citizen of Northgard City, one had to accumulate a certain amount of merit points before they could join. As long as they fought bravely on the battlefield, they would be granted citizenship within half a year to a year. Furthermore, they would be rewarded handsomely. The lowest monthly salary for regular soldiers in Northgard City was 1 gold coin. As one's power and position increased, so did their salary. Other than the salary, Northern Town City would also give them land and houses. After they had served for a certain number of years, they could buy these properties for 1/3 of the original price. As long as they worked hard in the army for a few years and did not gamble, these soldiers would become the middle class of Northern Town City. As for the lower-ranking officers, they were already richer than many knights. However, it was not easy to become a soldier in Northern Town City. Sulan had strict requirements for the army. They had to have a clean background and know how to be grateful. Those who were cunning and unruly would not pass the inspection. Sulan did not want to raise a bunch of ungrateful bastards. In the central square of the town, the grand celebration had begun. The entire square had turned into a sea of joy. Sulan had a simple meeting with the nobles and merchants. He then began to enjoy the beautiful dance of the half-elves. Magic fireworks bloomed beautifully in the sky. At this moment, in the distant sky, an eagle quickly flew over. The eagle circled in the sky and landed in a building beside the inner city barracks. A few minutes later, a messenger rushed out. The dance of the half-elves originated from the elves. It was more beautiful than the dance of humans. Sulan was mesmerized by the dance. He had already thought of a few poses in his mind. He was going to try it out with his 2 maids at night. Before he could decide which pose to use first, a messenger hurried over under the lead of a guard. "Your Majesty, there is an urgent military situation," he said as he handed over a letter. Sulan immediately came back to his senses. He took the letter and began to read it. His expression changed slightly. He said to the officials, "Continue the celebration. Let's go." He then left with the guard. Sulan did not return to the palace. Instead, he went straight to the wizard tower. He found Hathaway, who was reading at the astrology station. "Why are you in such a hurry? What happened?" Seeing Sulan's expression, Hathaway also realized that something big had happened. Traces of demons have been found in Tarbet's province, south of Florence. Sulan handed the letter to Hathaway. "Demons?" Hathaway frowned. "Was it done by the fallen?" "Yes." Sulan nodded. Some nobles were unwilling to lose. They chose to cooperate with the fallen to slaughter the villagers and sacrifice them to summon demons. So far, at least 6 villages have been massacred. Thousands of people have been killed. With so many souls and flesh sacrificed, there is a high chance of summoning a high-grade demon, or even a legendary demon. I need you to help me teleport there. No problem. Hathaway nodded. I'll set the coordinates first. You get ready. A legendary demon is not easy to deal with. Do you want to bring a few more people? Or you can give me a coordinate, and I'll open the portal and directly kill the demon with the particle cannon? Get ready. If the demon is not easy to deal with, I'll inform you through telepathy and then open the portal for a super long-range attack. The Northwind Tower could not fly now, and weapons like the particle cannon could only attack in a straight line. The limit of attack on the ground was 50 kilometers. If they wanted to attack a target thousands of kilometers away, they could only open the portal in advance and attack when the enemy locked on in advance. This tactic required Sulan's cooperation to lock on the target's position at close range, open the portal, and then let the high-energy beam from the particle cannon pass through. This kind of high-energy beam would affect the stability of the portal and cause some deviation. It needed to be corrected in advance. If the cooperation was not good, it was easy to miss the target. If the enemy discovered it in advance, it would be easy to avoid, so Su Lan also needed to restrict the enemy's movement. Generally, if the enemy was not too difficult to deal with, Su Lan would not call for this kind of heavenly justice. Hathaway's teleportation spell was more powerful than Sullen's, but this kind of long-distance teleportation without coordinates would have a lot of errors. It was normal for it to be offset by dozens of kilometers. If they could create the eye of the sky in the future and send it to the sky, they could try to accurately teleport. It was said that in the era of the ancient gods created a rainbow bridge that could connect to any place in the multiverse. No one knew if this legend was true or not. You're tuning into the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.